As you see more of what's really true, the natural byproduct is to see less judgment. When you see more of what's true, the natural byproduct is to see less fear. And where there is less fear, there's more love. We're not trying to see with more love. We're just seeing more of what's true, and love is the natural byproduct. So we're not trying to look out at life and see things as beautiful. We're questioning our assumptions. We're questioning what we think is true and realizing that, oh, maybe it's not really true. V asks, how does seeing only the beauty reconcile with all the ugliness of war, hate, and violence going on? I find it hard to focus only on the beauty with all of that going on because it is part of us. That's great, V. Thank you. In some way, this is like saying, how do I reconcile all of the separation that I see? Like, how can I just focus on the wholeness when there's so much separation? How can I focus on the beauty when there's so much ugliness? And I'm making assumptions about what I assume you're saying. Let me just ramble a little bit about this from my experience. You know, something that I've recognized time and time again is that what I perceive to be ugly is only my perception of ugly. Just because I perceive something as ugly doesn't mean that's what it is. As I'm looking out the window here of my front door and there's a tree with crooked branches, I can perceive that tree as ugly because it's got crooked branches, but that doesn't mean it's ugly. Now, if I perceive it as ugly, then I feel ugly, right? Do you see that? I feel the perception that I give, but that doesn't mean it is the perception that I give. And so as I look out into the world and I perceive ugly, does that mean it's really ugly? Or is that just how I'm seeing it? And there's an interesting thing that happens when you can perceive without the projection of ugly or beautiful. If you can perceive without turning it into something. Oh my goodness, this actually goes so deep. And maybe we'll fast forward here, but look at it this way. When you look at another human being without telling a story, you are infinitely more inclined to see beauty than you are ugliness. Because the perception of ugliness, I'm saying this loosely, but the perception of ugliness requires judgment. And in the absence of judgment, you're more inclined to end up at a beautiful result, even if that beauty is communicated as compassion. And this is why the whole world becomes beautiful to me when I see it with no judgment, is that what arises is compassion. And you see what happens when you feel compassion. It's a beautiful feeling. So I might see something that is unsightly or might smell bad, but to see it without judgment, there's a compassion. And that compassion feels infinitely more beautiful than does the ugliness that comes with judgment. Because the question here is, okay, these things that I see, what is it really? Because as I'm observing life and circumstance, I'm seeing how I see it. I'm seeing what I turn it into. The confusion is to believe that the way that I see it is the way that it is, filtered through my filter, my conditioning, my judgments. But when I look past all that noise and see it without giving it a name, I see that it's part of everything. I see that it's not its own thing. It's not separate. And so when I'm looking at the tree, I'm looking at life. When I'm looking at the flowers, I'm also looking at the stars. It all goes together, which is also to say, I'm looking at myself. That one goes deep too. And so this, again, and I have to repeat myself here, this is not an expectation about how one should see. We're not hearing these things and saying, oh, okay, well, I should see things as beautiful. No. We're just taking a step back and asking what's really true. Because as you see more of what's really true, the natural byproduct is to see less judgment. When you see more of what's true, the natural byproduct is to see less fear. And where there is less fear, there's more love. We're not trying to see with more love. We're just seeing more of what's true, and love is the natural byproduct. So we're not trying to look out at life and see things as beautiful. We're questioning our assumptions. We're questioning what we think is true and realizing that, oh, maybe it's not really true. And in your example, V, of war, hate, and violence, do you see how, in a way, it's like, what about the 10,000 things? And those 10,000 things are unending. It's like, you're not going to be able to go through all those 10,000 things and find the beauty in them all. The invitation is to step back and see the whole thing, because those 10,000 things aren't really 10,000 things. So it's a bit of a trap to think that we have to work out each of these 10,000 ugly things, where we are essentially saying, okay, but what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? There's 10,000 of those, but what about? And we can investigate some of those, like we did with violence, and see how that applies to everything. You simply see it where you can see it. And not everyone is able to see it right now to the degree that other people are able to see it. You see it where you can see it. It's kind of like you trust the process.